Hey everybody, I've left the darkness behind and now I'm back into the light and we're going to be doing something a little bit more upbeat today. Look at this, I've got a nice orange t-shirt on and I'm talking about pancake power. Sure all of you guys like pancakes, though this unit is not going to be about pancakes. This is unit 21 and we're going to be talking about economic modelling. Yay! Okay, maybe not so much the yay, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about why economic modelling is important and when it's done. So we're not going to be too technical on this. Economic modelling is a fairly important part of economics and it does apply to you a little bit. So I'm going to talk about that at the end. Alright, so why do we model? Why do we use economic modelling? Basically, in short, we want to know what's going to happen with something. So for example, you have an initiative, you have a project, you want to know what's going to happen with that. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? What are the good things? What are the bad things? I do a lot of cost-benefit analysis with all my work that I do, and we're trying to see into the future. So this is modelling your costs and your benefits to be able to make a decision about a particular initiative. And that's possibly the most important thing, the most key thing to why we engage in any sort of economic modelling. And there's also modelling that goes into the modelling, and so we're predicting various values and unit values. So anyway, I'm trying not to get too complex on that, but also economic modelling, and if we develop models anyway, allows us a certain level of consistency. So we obtain particular unit values around a particular thing for whatever reason that might be, and we can apply it across various different projects, and then we can see how they stack up. And the modelling allows for that consistency. If we didn't do any modelling at all, then we wouldn't necessarily know which ones are better because you don't have that level of consistency. So it helps us, visualise things a little bit better. And also as well, economic modelling allows us to pull in knowledge from a lot of different people into a lot of different areas. Because in order to construct a model, there's a lot of research that goes into that. So you're not just relying on your own noggin to make a decision. You're using inputs from a lot of different people, and a lot of research has gone into those. And in some cases, determining particular values that go into something could be a lifetime's worth of research that goes into that. And with economic modelling, you can pull all that research in there, and you can use that to your advantage to make various predictions. It gives you a good idea of what a particular outcome might be, or the general direction of that, and the sort of things that are going to work well and things that are likely not to work well. After all, we can't factor in everything because the world is very dynamic and there's a lot of moving parts, as you might say. Okay, so what do we tend to model? There could be a lot of things that you could model, but generally you want to model things that have the greatest impact. So let's take, for example, general equilibrium modelling. These models are very expensive and very time-consuming in order to create and construct and gather all of the data. So if you're going to invest all that money in a model, then it has to be something of significance, Maybe it's a massive project that you're going to have, and that could be for a private company or for a government organisation. For example, you're going to build a brand new stadium, a $200 million stadium for the upcoming Olympics. You want to know what's going to happen by building those stadiums, what's going to happen by even applying for the Olympics, what's going to happen when the Olympics arrives. You can make some estimates on that. And what's going to be the broader impact to the whole country, because something like the Olympics is going to affect the entire country. You can look at it in terms of a private company. You're going to release a new product, or you're going to make a major change to the existing product that actually has a large user base, for example. It's like Microsoft upgrading to Windows XXYZZZBBN or something, What is going to be the impact of that upgrade? Who is it going to affect? What businesses are going to be, feeding into that? And you need to make some predictions. Basically, we're talking about general equilibrium modelling. You're going to be looking at the bigger projects that have a wide effect. As wide as possible. Some of them don't have to be that big, as long as it's a particularly, like for example, it could be a policy, which could be, you're going to be changing, what could you have a policy? For example, tax. You're going to increase tax for a particular group of people. That may not cost a lot of money to implement, but it has a very, very wide effect on both investment and consumption and all sorts of stuff. And it's probably worth putting it into a general equilibrium model. So when do we model? We looked at the type of things you could model. I would say probably 2 points in time I recommend modelling. As I mentioned before, modelling is good to predict a certain thing and predict a certain outcomes looking into the future. So you would do your economic modelling before a particular event. So if the Olympics are coming along, you'd want to do your modelling a couple of years in advance of the Olympics to make various predictions what's going to happen when the Olympics arrives and what's going to be those spillover effects after the Olympics, which, you know, there's a lot of infrastructure that goes into preparing for the Olympics. You've got all the costs involved and what are the benefits beyond the Games itself. Then you may want to model it again, and that's after the Olympics, for example. So after the Olympics have actually taken place, maybe 4 or 5 years later, you can look at the effects of what's happened at the Olympics. What did it actually pan out as expected? Are we getting the benefits as we thought? And we call these ex post evaluations. And what's good about an ex post evaluation is it gives you an idea of how accurate what we call your ex ante evaluation, which is done prior to the event, actually is. And that actually helps us to improve the quality of future evaluations. On the negative side of that, ex post evaluations are not particularly popular, and I think they should be more popular than they are, but people are always moving forward, often not thinking about the past. But you've got to look at it going forward and going back as well, because you want to constantly improve your methods of actually evaluating things. So how do we model? You can have some very, very sophisticated models. General equilibrium models tend to be very, very sophisticated. Very huge, massive computers that require thousands and thousands of inputs. And can be very, very complicated. You can also have some models that are also fairly simple. Like some of the cost-benefit analysis models that I've worked on have not been overly complicated. Because, and quite often, the simple models are most valuable in the sense they're much quicker to put together, and it depends what you're using the modelling for. Do you want a precise answer? But chances are your super big models aren't going to be particularly precise because you're always going to be focusing on just a few knowns. There's so many unknowns that actually modelling to such great detail doesn't really help that much. So you really want to use modelling to give you a general idea about what's going to happen. So personally, I recommend keeping the models fairly simple. I've used Excel spreadsheets for modelling and I found them to be quite useful. And also, like I mentioned about consistency, if you keep the model simple, it's easier to keep it consistent in terms of what you're doing. Whereas a very complicated model is going to have to be tweaked and changed from time and time again, simply because there's going to be errors in it, there's going to be new information, new data, and you lose some of that consistency. So I recommend you can do modelling, keep it as simple as you can. After all, we never really know what the answers are as long as it provides us with a general idea. And that's why I see the value in modelling. So, okay, so I talked about modelling. So how is that relevant to you? Simply put, chances are you're not an economist like me, so you're not going to be doing cost-benefit analysis. You're probably not going to be building some sophisticated model, and you're probably not going to be doing econometrics and finding inputs into some of the more sophisticated models. But modelling, economic modelling itself and the principles behind it can be used in your own daily activities and your own planning ahead. So, for example, you could be planning a party, simply put. So, what goes into a party? Who are you doing it for? You're going to do a party for your daughter, imagine that, okay? So, your daughter has some friends, so make a list of the friends. There's going to be certain requirements, so then you can make the requirements for the party. You're going to get food, you're going to get plates, you're going to get cake, you're going to get bouncy castle, all that sorts of stuff. And then you can put in all the costs of those, so then you work it out. So what if I increase, let's get another bouncy castle, what's that going to cost, what's that going to affect? And you end up coming up with a whole kind of plan. And you can look at it, well, okay, if I have this party, it's going to cost me $12,000. Is it worth it? Then again, you've got to consider your daughter as well, How significant would it be to her? Does she get a party every single year? Does she have expectations that this is going to be a huge party? Is it a special birthday? Is it her 10th birthday? Is it her 15th birthday, 18th birthday, 21st birthday? And stuff like that. So you've got to kind of look at the benefit side of it. So this is sort of an informal modelling side of things. And you can also use this as well. If the bouncy castle is going to be too expensive, what else does your daughter like? And what do her friends like? So again, you can make various changes to keep within a particular budget. And this isn't economic modelling per se, but it's some of the ideas behind the modelling that comes into it. It involves some research and, it could be a helpful exercise for you. So this is sort of a planning exercise which has some foundations in economic modelling. Alright, that brings me to the end of another unit. Like I said, it's 21 now. So the next unit, 22 and 23, we're going to look at how economics can actually make your life better. And I kind of started all that already with talking about how we can use modelling to help you plan a party. So, so anyway, the next 2 units, hopefully you'll find them interesting. And before I leave, remember, we've got 3 questions for you to MCQ questions just to have a little look at and have a go on. So, you know, best of luck with those, and I'll see you soon. Oh, by the way, next 2 presentations I'm going to be outdoors, so it's going to have a little bit of a different look to it. Alright, see you around.